All right, everybody. I hope you guys are doing great. It is so good to be here. Hey, Christine, good to have you. Thank you so much. I think there must be many people live tonight, but we will power through, right? Hey, Shalimar, how are you doing? It's good to see you. Wasn't that sunrise beautiful, right? So beautiful. All right, so we are trying to gear up for the Sarah Boone trial. Jury selection should have started this past Monday. And of course, you know, Milton came to town and Milton shut the whole show down. And so now we will start jury selection on this Monday, the 14th, I think. Am I wrong about that? Maybe it's not the 14th. I think it is. Yeah, the 14th. So I want to do something a little bit unconventional here. I am a licensed psychologist, and sometimes I do like to talk about my profession when I'm talking about some of these court cases. Many times I avoid it. I don't give much psychological content or information because this is my hobby, and I just want to relax and kind of have fun and chit chat. You guys are my friends, and so I do kind of look, let's face it, we've got some really great psychologists, forensic psychologists on YouTube that are creators themselves, and we can all go to those channels if we want to. But my channel is sort of like my group of friends to just talk about true crime cases, extraordinary cases, unusual trials, just kind of having fun. And if true crime can be fun, I guess, but you know, being part of the group and having a good time. So I think that this case with Sarah Boone, though, it really, I like it. Don't get me wrong. I don't like what she did at all, but I do very much like that we finally, we get to have a different personality disorder to discuss. Everybody is a narcissist, right? Like that is the most overused term, narcissistic personality disorder. And I'm just like, okay, y'all, we have like 9-11 other personality disorders that it might be. And so I think Sarah is very interesting because she has a lot of characteristics that we would really associate with someone that had histrionic personality disorder, right? And I thought, yes, this is a great case for people to get really intimate and aware of like behaviors and symptoms that are associated with a different personality disorder, something different from narcissistic personality disorder. Thank you, Dr. Romani. But to kind of start learning a little bit about histrionic personality disorder, I do think there are many people that find themselves the target of legal or cop action. But they're not, people with histrionic personality disorder, they're not typically cruel and cold-hearted, cold-blooded, and they're usually people that their level of excitation, their need to be seen and recognized and appreciated those things typically get out of hand, and then they get in trouble with the law because they're just sort of out of control, right? So they'll get like drunk and disorderly, a lot of domestic violence types of, not violent, but kind of just, slapping at each other, not the really horrifying things that we associate with antisocial personality disorder and sometimes narcissistic personality disorder. People with histrionic personality disorder tend to be a bit more attention seeking. And as I've really been studying Sarah's videos, her interrogations, her history of domestic violence, definitely George, he has had the cops called on him many times for domestic violence against Sarah being the victim. I think 4 of those calls were actionable. I had the dates. I don't want to waste a lot of time digging through my notes, but it was about 4 times that they were actionable. They were all misdemeanors, right? But Sarah, she was arrested once and it became actionable, and hers was actually a felony. And that is because she choked her beloved, her fun size boyfriend, George. So, so she, she's a curious person, right? And people seem to recognize that she's unusual and she's a little bit different. She really, in some ways, she's sort of, well, there's a lot of detachment, but she does drink quite a bit. She's very some of the people in the apartment complex said that she would be drunk at 9 a.m. She's a daytime drinker. She hasn't had a job in 2 years. Her ex-husband, Brian, the father of her child, he said she's quite, undependable. She'll supposedly have some visitation time, but then she doesn't show up, or she's late because she's either drunk or she's hungover and trying to get over being drunk. And so it's just this real chaotic kind of messy lifestyle, right? And you do have to parse out, okay, what are we looking at here? Are we looking at the effects of alcoholism? And of course, we all know alcoholism comes with a great deal of chaotic lifestyle, irresponsibility, low levels of conscientiousness. So is that what makes Sarah so difficult to understand? Is that, yes, there may be a personality lurking there. It may be histrionic. It may be a little bit of narcissistic personality disorder. And there could be some comorbid, like antisocial personality or antisocial features. But you can't ignore the fact that a lot of her symptoms or her behaviors are getting modified because the alcoholism is so bad, right? So I was thinking about this and I was like, she is very curious in her presentation. She's quite unusual, but some of that is the alcoholism. And then she's quite delayed in her psychosocial development. Even though she's older, middle-aged, she still believes that she's a cute little blondie in high school. When the cop said, what makes you special? She said something like, you clearly don't know who I am. And the cop said, well, okay, who are you? Like, tell me who you are. And she said, well, I've always made straight A's. And my jaw hit the ground because I was like, lady, you're like 40 years old. Your claim to fame, your feeling of standing out and being special is that you always made straight A's 2 decades ago. So that shows you just how stunted people can get when they experience a trauma. They kind of get locked in at that age, right? And then that goes on to explain a lot of what we initially watch her and go, wow, she's such a weird person. Has such a strange, unusual presentation. But if you stop a minute and consider, well, how does a 14, 15, 16-year-old girl behave? What kind of body language does a 14, 15, 16-year-old girl have? Then you're like, yeah, that's Sarah. Like, she even comes out one time on one of the domestic violence calls that she makes against George. And when she comes skipping out of the apartment, clearly intoxicated, she's doing little cheerleader jumps. And her face is very dramatic and making these little like pouty lips, like she's arguing with her mom and dad to do something that all the other kids are doing. And it looks so peculiar because it's coming from a 40-year-old woman, right? So real quick, a pattern of behaviors that are common in histrionic personality disorder: attention seeking, needing desperately to be the center of attention, and actually growing very uncomfortable when you're not the center of attention. Dramatic expression. And we definitely, that is our Sarah, isn't it? Dramatic expression, having rapidly shifting emotions, demonstrating very shallow emotions, and being here, just get out your highlighter and just highlight being overly dramatic and emotional. And does that describe Sarah Boone? Right? In everything, in every way, the way she talks, the way her facial expressions, her nonverbals, her body language, all of it is quite overly dramatic and emotional. The cop says, well, so you found him this morning? And she says, yes, yes. And it's like, chill, girl, just take a deep breath and relax. And yet she doesn't really have any kind of self-awareness as she goes over to the water spigot, straddles the shrubs, the hedge, so that she can then lean over and drink out of the spigot like you did when you were a kid, not as a grown woman. So she is quite immature, and yet she's also intelligent. So, that is something that is usually often seen with like trauma. Relationships, people with histrionic personality disorder, they sort of experience relationships as deeper or more intimate than they actually are. And the question that I always have is it because this person is sort of delusional and they've convinced themselves that Garth Brooks is in love with them and wants to have babies with them? Or is it the person is simply being overly dramatic and making something far more intense than it technically is, just because that seems exciting and attractive? Remember, if borderline personality disorder causes people or has as its hallmark an intense fear of abandonment, people with histrionic personality disorder, their greatest fear is to be invisible. Their greatest fear is to be average, insignificant. That it is a horrible experience for them to feel like no one notices them. That's kind of their driving. They will very often use their physical appearance to get attention. In the era of Botox and wrestling, I hate to say this, but and I myself have gotten fillers and Botox, so I'm not throwing shade at anyone, okay? But very often people with histrionic personality disorder, they'll have this big, loud personality, or they'll be overly seductive, or they'll get like breast implants that are like 5 times larger than what normal is, or they'll get so much filler in their lips and their cheeks that they kind of take on a cat-like appearance. All of these things, because they're enhancing their looks to be the most attractive person in the room. They want to be a sex symbol. They want people to notice them when they walk in. Men also will do this. This isn't unusual. A lot of times you'll see men that, they've got these enormous, huge, bulging muscles to the point that it almost looks AI, like the old Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was competing weightlifting. Sure, if you're competing and such, then I get it. But do you really need to do that when you're, a 35-year-old accountant? And I don't mean someone who's healthy and strong. I mean, they take it to extreme lengths. Speech for people that have histrionic personality sometimes lacks any detail, very vague. They'll sort of say things to let you read into what they're saying, and then they have wiggle room to deny, whatever you think they said. These people with histrionic personality disorder, they are easily misled. They are easily molded into behaving in a way that is not really their own. And a lot of times they'll sort of reinvent themselves to be more like someone that they found to be particularly interesting and captivating. The whole thing that drives them is, I want to be seen, I want to matter, I want somebody to notice me in a way that's different from narcissism, right? It's different from narcissism. Narcissism is the false belief, I am the best. With histrionic, it is, I fear I am not the best. So I need you to pay attention to me. I need you to notice, that I'm in the room. And finally, as we think about Sarah Boone, the overly sensitive to criticism. The slightest hint at disapproval will crush their soul and just make them feel, like they're being re-traumatized all over again. And so they also have a low level, they have a low tolerance for frustration. They're constantly seeking approval. And very often they'll say things like, don't you know who I am? Don't you know how special I am? Don't you know how wonderful I am? So people with histrionic personality disorder, they're out seeking attention. They speak big and dramatic. They have really strong opinions about things, and they really will try to use lingo that is part of a certain profession, or they'll use, $10 words. They'll try to talk about, extemporaneously. They'll want to use words that have like a lot of syllables and such, again, to try to appear more interesting than they may actually be. And at the same time that they're quite extra, how do I want to say this? Not extroverted, but they're extra. They're just extra, right? They're bigger than most people. The emotions, they don't have a good day. They have a fantabulous day, right? Well, yeah, we got a little frustrated. Oh my God, it was the trip from hell. Okay, that's your histrionic personality disorder. And so at the same time that they're so big and trying to get people to notice them and larger than life, they're still quite easily influenced, shallow emotions that change rapidly. And, they're kind of in this semi-delusional state where they think people are really much closer to them than they actually are. And so because Sarah has the problem with alcohol, and she's got quite a significant past of trauma. Her mom was very ill, died when she was, young, early 20s, I think. She's got a brother who's a registered sex offender, been in prison. She definitely has not had an easy life, But I thought those things are sort of confounding. It makes it really hard to see the actual histrionic stuff. And then I thought of Betty Broderick. That's right. I don't know how long it's been since you thought of Betty Broderick, but I thought of Betty Broderick. And she and Sarah, I think, are quite extraordinarily similar in a lot of ways. Do any of you guys see some similarity? Hey, Funky Jasunky, good to see you. Hey, Kelly, oh, my friend. Hello, pretty bird. Spell check hates me. Well, I know. What do you guys think? Hey, Cinnamon Hot Hot. What do you guys think? Do you see any similarities between Betty Broderick and Sarah Boone? I said they're two princesses in a pod, right? They're the same girl. The difference is that Betty is used to $1 million homes, and Sarah's an alcoholic who hasn't worked in 2 years. So that will definitely bring some differences in terms of lifestyle choices. However, yeah, there is some really crazy stuff. For example, I think one of the things that sort of caught people's attention with Sarah Boone, I mean, the suitcase was a lot, okay? The story was crazy. But one of the things that made us all sit in disbelief, like even Peter Tragos was like, what is up with this chick? Y'all remember that? Okay. The letters. That was really the first indication that Sarah Boone might just be a horse of a different color, right? There's something off about her you just can't put your finger on. You can certainly name her curious, extraordinary behaviors, but it's hard to make sense of it and put it all together. Even the brilliant, lawyer, was like, she's kind of trippy, but I'm not sure what it is. But those dang letters, the letters to the judges, the letters to the court, unbelievable, right? Just unbelievable. Well, guess who else wrote letters? Oh, yeah, Betty Broderick. She did. She wrote letters almost immediately from being, arrested for the murder of her ex-husband and his new bride. She wrote these like 25-page letters to the Los Angeles Times. She would find out who the editors were for these big national newspapers and write letters. Get this. She would read the articles about herself, and then she would write a 10, 15, 20-page letter to correct the newspaper story, to demand a retraction and say, you've got to do the changes that I've made and then reprint it. Yes, that was Betty Broderick. She sure did. Crystal, aka Beaver Gaming, sub Crystal. She officially has the longest name on YouTube. Okay. So Betty Broderick, the letters that were, they were not just like, let me send you my idea, you send me back your idea. Both of them writing these little mini novels with this position of, let me tell you what you got wrong, Buster. This is the way it really went. And the reason I know that is because I am gifted with extraordinary powers of deduction, and I'm gifted in inductive thinking, and you all fail to appreciate truly how special I am. Oh, yeah. And did I tell you when I was young, I was a hottie? Okay. They both had that attitude, right? Kelly O says, maybe they're just batshit crazy. I don't know, maybe, but the letters are quite unusual for these inmates to do, right? Like people write letters to their family and friends and such. But then when you start addressing the judge like he works for you, something's wrong. When you start talking down to the judge to instruct him how poor and low quality the public defender's office is, how her public defenders are all imbeciles and she deserves far better representation, the rest of us are going, okay, wait a minute. Sarah, you are drunk by 9 a.m. every morning and you haven't had a job in 2 years. And your biggest claim to fame is that you were a straight A student 2 decades ago. Why is it that you think that you deserve like a higher quality of attorney? Like why? So both of these people, even though they come from dramatically different stations in life, they both have that same belief that they're special, they should be noticed, and then they go to great lengths. They expend a great deal of energy to make people notice them. All right. So tonight, even though we are talking about Sarah Boone, because her trial starts on Monday, jury selection starts on Monday. I thought it might be interesting to just kind of watch Betty Broderick on the stand. She shot and killed her ex-husband and his 28-year-old new wife, his secretary. It was quite cliche. That once she killed them, then she was excited because she had fans. She had fans. Women all over California and indeed the whole of the United States of America. At one point, she even bragged about having fans in Spain. Abused women that needed a crusader to fight for this problem where women give their lives to their men. They work and they feed the family while the husband's going to medical school or going to law school. And then finally, when he starts getting successful and making money, he just discards the wife and takes on a new little hottie with all his money. And she's the crusader. Betty Broderick is the crusader to right the world of gender wars. Now, this is actually her letters. This is how she envisioned herself. This is how she saw herself. This woman had boxes and boxes and boxes of letters, books that she was sending out everywhere. It became her own, it became like her job, her identity to be the woman avenging the scorned wife. And I mean, she was scorned. She had so much anger bubbling and boiling and brewing inside of her. She did extraordinary things. We don't even have enough time to talk about all the craziness that is Betty Broderick. But the point is, do we see some parallels to Sarah Boone? Even though Sarah Boone is quite poor, she's addicted to substances. Do we see some similarities? So that's what we're going to do tonight. Okay. If you can hear the video, put a 1 in the chat.
Did you have in your car any keys that you thought might fit one of the doors of Dan's house?
Yes, I had a key ring with a funny looking key on it.
Okay. Was it because of the shape of the key that you thought it was that it would fit Dan's house?
It was a very strange looking key, and long before I was informed, or the kids told me, that Dan's keys were very funny looking, and I knew Dan had funny looking keys. It was a good chance that was his funny looking key.
Okay. Did you use the key to get into the house?
Yes.
Okay. And What were you going to do if the key didn't work?
Got in the house anyway. We always got in the house.
That is so Sarah Boone, isn't it? It's like, what do you mean if the key doesn't work? I do what I want to do. I can do that. So even if the funny looking key wasn't, we'd still get in anyway. We always got in. But remember when I said about how people with histrionic personality disorder, their speech is quite vague. They do also tend toward lingo of people that professions that involve a terminal degree. Doctors, perhaps nurses, attorneys, lawyers. But again, they're not often using it properly or correctly because they're not a part of the profession. So they speak in very vague ways. And then they sort of like, what do you mean? Like, don't you speak English? And you're like, yeah, I do speak English. But why did you just talk about the funny looking key being able to get in the house? And then you said, oh, well, I didn't need the funny looking key to get in the house. Definitely Sarah Boone.
Did you want to wake Dan up when you got there? And when you first got there, did you want Dan to know that you were driving up?
You're not going to admit to meeting.
Sustained.
What was your feelings about Dan knowing that you got there?
I wanted him to know I was there and that I had the gun before he jumped on a phone and reported me, which is what he would have done if he saw me coming from the street or if I rang the front doorbell.
Did you ring the doorbell at all?
No.
Do you remember?
So you hear the sense of entitlement, correct? That she can do these things because she can. And even if it takes a gun to force him to see her, she has a right or a need to be seen. And in her experience, she was discarded, right? She was discarded. He took a new 28-year-old bride, and she was getting something like, I think she was getting like $30,000 a month or something. Once all of the settlement had been done, she was getting something like $30,000 a month, which is $400,000 a year, just about, right? And she didn't care about money, and she didn't care about lifestyle and living. Only thing she cared about is that he did not have the right to not be her husband. He didn't have the right to ignore her. She couldn't tolerate that he would refuse to talk to her or refuse to even look at her if she was in the room. That's what got her. She was eat up with this need to be seen and acknowledged.
Which door you went into?
The utility door of the house, which is mostly the traffic door.
Do you remember driving to his house that day?
No.
And do you know what route you took?
I remember leaving my house, backing out of the driveway and leaving. I remember that, but I don't remember at which point I decided where I was when I decided not to go to the beach and go to Dan's house. All the way to Dan's house, I was just thinking, I've just got to make this stop. I just got to make this stop. I'm not going to live another day like this. I can't wake up just being absolutely at his mercy anymore. So all the way there, I just kept thinking, I've got to make this stop. I've got to make this stop. And I don't remember what even road I took to get there.
How would you describe, was it affecting you physically? I mean, were you clear thinking and seeing things clearly at that time?
The only way I can explain it.
Sustained.
She rolled her eyes at the prosecutor.
How would you describe how the world seemed to you at that time?
Your Honor, it's been asked and answered.
Sustained.
Well, Your Honor, I would like to make an offer of proof why it hasn't been.
Another question.
If I'm referring to how she was physically seeing the world at that time, it may be.
She's telling him how to be an attorney. Definitely Sarah.
Different than she's answered before.
Okay, go ahead. You can answer that.
Well, the only way I know how to describe it now is that there was all these thoughts just churning in my head, and there was so much going on inside my head. That's kind of like my eyeballs were turned backwards, and the whole world was inside my head because of all this.
So you really think her eyeballs were turned inside out backwards? You think that's possible? Yeah. This is part of that dramatic and overly descriptive use of language in an effort to make things more intense. I mean, I don't want to sound hard or cold to what her experience was. I think it was a nightmare. I think that her little husband put her through the ringer. I think he was cruel, and he used the legal system against her to the point that she was not able to hire an attorney. He blackballed her with all the attorneys. He took her children, her house, her marriage, her life, her history. And I'm sure that the whole thing was a complete and total nightmare. And yet she just kept standing there screaming, look at me, look at me, look at me. You can't disregard me. And just kind of that old saying, that you keep put your head on the chopping block. Eventually, most people go, my God, he is a cruel, cold, heartless bastard. I hate him. I'm going to move to New Hampshire. And then you get away from him, right? You get away, you spend some time healing, and then you begin rebuilding your life. Because that's what you do when someone betrays you and breaks your heart. But I think her drive was so powerful that he see her and he acknowledged that she was a person and she mattered and she had made a contribution to his life. She just couldn't tolerate the fact that he wanted to discard her and move on like she didn't exist. She could not move past it. And yet, once she killed him, she had fans. Once she killed him, she had purpose in life. Once she killed him, everybody wanted to see Betty. Everybody wanted to meet with Betty in the jail. Everybody wanted a piece of Betty, and that made Betty very happy.
Anguish. And so I wasn't seeing where I was going, and it was like I was just inward, and there was all this anguish and kind of darkness and crazy thoughts. Felt like you were in hell, actually.
Okay. When you got to the house, went in the back door, do you remember where you went?
And by comparison, so here's this woman who may have histrionic personality disorder, where her worst fear is that people don't notice her, that she become insignificant, invisible, correct? It's her worst fear. And what does her husband do? He makes her invisible. He gets a new woman and he kicks her out of their house, and then he divorces her, and then he takes her kids away, right? What would you do if your husband came home and said, I got a little 28-year-old girlfriend and I'm dumping you? You'd be devastated. You'd be hurt. You'd be horrified. You'd be furious, because hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. But at some point, you would get mad and you would be like, you know what? Screw you, buddy. You can go right straight off to hell. I'm better than this. You're just a big fat liar, and I want better for myself. And yes, it's painful, and it takes a while, but eventually you get there, correct? She never did. She never did. After the most horrible things were done to her, she had judges ridicule her while joking with Dan, her husband, in courtrooms. I mean, when you really get into the things that happened to this woman, it is shocking. And the things would have been enough to make you mad. You eventually would have reached a point where you were just like flipping the bird and saying, you are nothing to me. You are an evil, you know what? And I don't want any part of you. And now I'm going to go live in Maine and catch lobster, right? She never did. Why? Because she had to be seen. She couldn't tolerate that a husband of 20-something years was discarding her. That was more important than her self-respect or identity.
I got upstairs. I know that, but I don't know which route I took.
Okay. And when you went upstairs, do you remember where you went when you got to the top of the stairs?
The door to the bedroom was closed, but the next door was open, so I went in that door.
Okay. And where does that door lead to?
To what they call a TV room, but it's part of the bedroom suite on that side of the house.
Okay. And was anybody up at that time that you saw?
No.
Okay. Do you remember, were you holding the gun at that time?
I don't remember. I guess so.
Okay. What did, when you went into the TV room, what was the next thing that you did?
The TV room door was wide open, and then the door to their bedroom was part open. It wasn't closed. It was like ajar.
Okay. And did you go into that? Did you then go into their bedroom?
Yes.
And what did you do when you went into their bedroom?
Well, the motion that I made, although I don't think it was a big motion, the movement that I made into their bedroom woke them up.
Listen to that. Okay, what'd you do? Okay, I stepped into the room. I walked into the room, right? Isn't that what you would say if somebody said, what'd you do next? I walked in the room. I opened the door, went into the room, right? Not Betty. That's way too mundane of a description. Listen to her words here. Watch her body language as she describes simply walking into the room.
When you went into their bedroom?
Well, the motion that I made, although I don't think it was a big motion, the movement that I made into their bedroom woke them.
The movement that she made. The motion that she made. Come on, Betty. You just stepped into the room. You're going to hear her in a minute. She's going to say, I took one step into the room. Well, okay. So you took one step into it. What happened to, well, the motion that I made, the movement, and she acts it out, right? There you go. That's your histrionic PD in the flesh.
Them up, and they moved, and somebody screamed, call the police, and I said no, and I just fired the gun, and this big noise went off, and then I grabbed the phone and got the hell out of there. But I wasn't even in that room. I mean, it just was an explosion. Just, I moved, they moved, the gun went off, and it was like, ah, and it was that fast. It was like, ah.
I want to go through this. I want to go at least as much as we can, step by step. How would you describe your memory of that event? Do you have a clear memory of everything that happened?
What I can tell you in words now is it seems like a slideshow where slides are missing. You know, I remember driving up to the front of the house.
Yeah, the slides that'll get you the death penalty, right, Betty?
Remember the front of the house, but I don't remember if I went to the front door, and I don't remember going around. And then I know I was upstairs, and I remember opening the door.
But didn't she say that she went through the laundry room door, that was where the traffic went through, where like most people went in and out? She totally told us what door she went into at the beginning of this. She said that was the traffic door, meaning that's the door we always used going in and out, the laundry room door. She told us. Now she's saying, I don't remember how I got in the house. It's one of my missing slides.
Door to the bedroom. So I see myself doing that, but then I don't see anything else. And then I I know I grabbed the phone, but I don't remember leaving the house or running down the stairs or anything. So it's like there's these spots missing. It's like a flash of this, and then she's over there, and there's a flash of that, a flash of this. And that's what I told people later is, I didn't see anything in that room.
Now, when you first went into the door, do you remember do you remember what happened when you first went into the door of the bedroom?
Well, I hardly even got in. I opened the door and I stepped into the bedroom, like one step.
Okay, what happened to the motion, the movement? Do you see the difference in the vocabulary and the overly dramatic descriptions of very mundane, shallow things?
What did you do at that point?
Well, I was gonna say, Dan, wake up, I have to talk to you.
Did you say something?
I don't know.
She was going to say, Dan, wake up, I have to talk to you, and turn that light on and look at me. That's what she was going to say. Because her goal was for him to see her. Can't you see her? Can't you see me? Can't you see how badly you have hurt me? Can't you see how much you've taken from me? Can't you see that you did me wrong? Can't you see that you should be apologizing? She cannot learn that he doesn't see her at all. That is what she can't tolerate.
What happened at that point?
I walked in and they moved away from me toward the other place. And I heard Linda say, call the police.
Now, do you remember them talking to you at all? Saying something to you other than
No, nobody said anything to me, I don't think.
Okay. And what happened when they went towards, what's the next thing you remember after they went towards the phone and said, call the police?
I kind of like screamed, like this huge scream, like, no! And the gun went off, and I just remember one time and one noise, but I know that I must have done that because you have to do that on the gun.
Okay, y'all, she didn't just scream, no. She didn't just yell, no. What kind of scream was it?
Scream like, no! And the gun went like...
They went towards the phone and said, call the police.
I kind of like screamed, like this huge scream, like, no!
A huge scream, not an itty bitty tiny scream, not a little moderately loud scream. No. It was a huge scream.
And the gun went off, and I just remember one time and one noise, but I know that I must have done that because you have to do that on the gun. But it was so fast. I just went, ah!
Now, did you scream out loud?
I felt like I made a huge scream, but I don't know if I made any noise. It was just all sensation. You move in and then.
Now that is a statement I believe 100%, because I think with like histrionic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder, emotion and sensation, that is how they interpret their world. So if they have a feeling, that is going to be far more informative than a fact. Feelings, they embrace. Facts and figures and numbers, not so much. But if they have a feeling, an emotion, a sense about, something or some sensory experience, perceptual experience, that they embrace. They love it.
And it was this huge explosion and scream and all at once.
Do you remember actually pulling the trigger?
No.
Is that a gun where you have to pull the trigger?
Yes, I asked people that day, do you have to pull the trigger? And they told me that you had to, but I don't remember pulling it even the first time.
But you remember a large bang.
Yes.
Okay. What's the next thing you remember after that?
Is grabbing the phone so that he couldn't get on it because Dan was trying to get on the phone and grabbed the phone, and I tried to get out of the room and it kind of jerked, and I jerked it back and pulled it out of the wall, and I think I threw it on the top of the stairs. I don't know. I may have just put it there.
Now, after you heard the boom, were you out of bullets?
I assume so, yes,
And how did you know that?
because there was no more noise and the gun was clicking.
Okay.
The what? What'd you say, Betty? The gun was clicking. She said it, right? How did you know you were out of bullets? Because the gun was clicking. She says it, right?
Did you hear the gun click?
I don't remember the gun clicking, no.
Oh my God. This vague speech, the shallow, kind of ethereal type of agreeing with everything and agreeing with nothing at all makes you crazy, right? We're going to get that from Sarah Boone. I've seen a lot of people do videos on Sarah, and they talk about how she contradicts herself. And then I think, well, not exactly. She's not exactly contradicting herself. She's simply being quite vague in how she's responding to answers, allowing you, leading you to your own idea of what she's saying. And then later she says something else and your head spins and you go like, what? What did you just say? Just like she did here. He said, well, how did you know that the gun was out of bullets? Because there was no more noise. It was just, the gun was just clicking. And literally within 2 sentences, she's saying, oh no, I don't remember hearing the gun click. Okay, Betty.
I just know that there was this huge noise and then there was no more noise.
And then after the noise, when you said the gun was clicking, was that after the noise? The clicking sound of the gun?
I guess.
Objection, Your Honor. She stated she didn't remember any clicking.
Sustained.
Do you remember pulling the trigger after? Do you remember pulling the trigger at all?
No.
What did you, now, when you indicated, when was it that you thought about what was the thought about the phone that made you grab the phone?
Objection asked to me.
Sustained.
May I have that read back to me, Your Honor, so I can, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Was there any reason that you were scared that Dan was going to grab the phone?
Yes, because every time I went to talk to him, he'd call the police and have me arrested on the restraining order for trying to talk to him for being within 100 yards of his house.
And now at that point,
And I wanted him to talk to me. I wanted him to see me. He doesn't get to erase me. That's all that's driving her. She never learns, okay, if I go over there to try to force him to see me, I'm just going to get arrested and it's not worth it. So what is something else I could do? I know I could go see my psychologist.
point in time when you left, do you know whether anyone was hit?
No, I thought Dan was after me.
Okay. Did Dan say, do you remember Dan sitting up in bed and saying, okay, you've shot me, I'm dead?
No.
Have you ever said that? Have you ever repeated that to anybody?
I know Lily says I said that. So I must have said that, but I heard Lily.
So Lily, one of the children, right? So that then makes me think, okay, so she claims the movement into the room, which turns out was a simple step into the room. That immediately there was a huge explosion. That's probably not accurate. If the kid woke up and actually comes in and now is hearing the conversation, my guess is there was a screaming match, right? There was a yelling match, as you would yell if you woke up and your ex was in your bedroom in the middle of the night. And Dan is actually fully on the floor. Like he didn't get shot in the bed. He was fully on the floor. I think he was probably standing up, yelling at her and with the phone in his hand, calling. And Linda was like moving toward Dan away from Betty, right? So she was still on the bed, but on his side of the bed. So I think it's probably likely that there was an argument. There was screaming and yelling. At least one of the kids woke up to come see what was happening. And that's how she heard her dad say, okay, now you've shot me. Now I'm dead.
I said that. I don't remember that.
Okay, and have you repeated it since then to people?
Yes.
And why was that?
Because Lily said I said it. It must have happened. Or I must have said it.
Do you remember where you went after that?
Well, I had nowhere to go. I mean, I was afraid Dan was after me. I was afraid when I went into that house of confronting Dan, and then when I left, I thought he was after me. And so I thought, oh man, you can't go home because he's gonna have called the police.
You hear the inflection in her voice, and of course I had nowhere to go, and I was scared to get there, and that's all I could do. Like she's reading a book to like a bunch of kids, right? So over the top.
And the police are going to be waiting at my house, and I didn't want to scare the boys and everything, so I didn't go home. So I ended up at a phone in Claremont, at a gas station in Claremont.
Do you know how long?
And I didn't know what to do or where to go or who to talk to or what to do.
Do you remember how long you drove around before you got to that gas station?
No.
How long were you at that gas station?
I still don't even know where the gas station was. It's somewhere in Claremont.
Okay, but when you arrived at the gas station, were you there very long?
I don't remember.
Did you make a call right away?
I don't remember if it was right away.
Okay.
I did remember. I remembered one phone number.
Okay, and did you call some people from the gas station?
I only remember dialing and calling and talking to Diane Black.
Okay. Do you remember calling Lee?
Yes, later.
Okay. When you called, where did you go from there? Did you go over someone's house?
I called Lee and I told her I was in trouble or something. I don't remember really what I told her. But I said that I'll try and get to your house. And if I don't get to your house, that means they've arrested me because the Suburban is real big and there weren't many cars out on a Sunday morning. And it has a load 'em up license plate. That's what it says. So it'd be real easy to get pulled over. And I said, if I don't arrive, honey, it's because the police got me. But I'll try and get to your house. So I went to Lee's house. And the reason for that is Dan didn't know where Lee lived. So if he was sending the cops to get me, he couldn't send them to Lee's house because he didn't know where Lee lived. Nobody knew where Lee lived except me.
When you got to Lee's house, how would you describe how you felt?
Well, whenever, especially this day, I felt bad that I was involving her, but at the same
time, I did it anyway. Why didn't you just go to the police station? Like, why did you have to go involve your poor friend in this nightmare drama? If all you're going to do is just willingly turn yourself in anyway. Because she needed to be seen. She needed to be center of attention. She needed to be important.
Tried to pretend like everything was okay. I guess. I don't know. I got there. I remember I took my camera out of the car. I gave her my camera, and I told her that I shot this gun at Dan's house, and I have to go give myself into the police. So I took off all my jewelry and stuff, but I don't really.
So she took off all her jewelry with this poor innocent woman who just wants to be left alone. She takes off all of her jewelry, which I'm sure was very expensive, and leaves her jewelry and her gun with this woman, where that could actually look really suspicious, right? I mean, I wouldn't trust Betty Broderick or Sarah Boone as far as I could throw them.
I know I did that, but I don't remember doing it. And then I sent Lee from her apartment to go check on Danny and Rhett, because I was worried that the cops were there and that the boys were afraid and stuff. So Jason and Lee went to check on Danny and Rhett.
Did you eventually turn yourself in that day?
Yes.
And were you taken to jail after you were arrested? Were you taken after you turned yourself in? Were you eventually taken to Las Colinas?
Yes.
Okay. And have you had conversations with a number of people since you've been in jail?
Yes.
When you first got to jail, how were you feeling?
I don't remember getting taken there. I know they put me in a suicide cell, stark naked for the first night I was there. And I was real shocking, and I don't remember being there or much of what happened. I just went where people told me to go.
Yeah. Now that first day or the first couple of weeks.
And I might go out on a limb here, take a wild guess. In some ways, I think being at the sheriff's department, it might have been comforting for Betty. It might have been an experience where she felt safe, that she was the center of attention. Everybody was looking at her and keeping an eye on her and never leaving her alone. I could see her being put into a cell and actually believe that she was safe and protected in the cell, if you understand what I mean. So to be alone at a house with nobody with you, no kids, the phone's not ringing, that would probably be the most terrifying experience of her life. But now here she is. The cops are driving all over town looking for her. She finally shows up at the police station and they all surround her. Now she's got everybody looking and standing at attention, staring at her, giving her instructions, and she's demonstrating how compliant she can be. I think it was grounding to be at the police station and to be arrested. I bet if you had the opportunity to talk to her, she would not describe that situation as uncomfortable. I think it was probably a comfort to her. And for sure, once she was in jail and all of the letter writing campaigns began, for sure, she was in hog heaven. That was the best environment possible for her to be seen as a hero to women, to be seen as a crusader for all women scorned. Yeah, she was in her element there.
That you were there, how were you feeling emotionally or mentally?
It's hard to just. I was very confused, but I was safe in jail. You know, they locked the rest of the world out when they locked me in this little corner cell, and that was good for me because then Dan couldn't get me, and I could just be safe in there, and I really liked that nobody could get me.
Mr. Riley,
Yes.
One more.
Sure.
How long are you gonna be?
Not very long, Your Honor, 5 or 10 minutes.
What do they want? Oh, she's taking out her tape, isn't she?
The first 2 or 3 months that you were in jail, were you able to come to grips with what had happened?
No. I wanted to, I wasn't able to deal with it. I wasn't able to hug my children or talk to my children. I wasn't able to go to Dan's funeral. I wasn't able to tell anybody
What?
how sorry I was.
What? You weren't able to go to Dan's funeral? What? I'm speechless. I am speechless. Curious. What do you guys think of that comment she just made? I didn't get to see my children. I didn't get this. I didn't get to go to Dan's funeral. She's listing all the things that she perceives herself to be a victim here. Yeah, she was denied going to Dan's funeral, and she puts that on her list of very bad hurts. She probably sees herself that she would have been in the role of the grieving widow. And what does the grieving widow get? All the attention, right?
Was that all this had happened. Anybody who was affected by it. I haven't been able to get in touch with any of the people who matter in this case.
Were you able to talk to the boys about what was going on?
No, Dan's brother took them out of town right away, and I was kept from them for almost 2 years, and I wasn't allowed to send birthday cards or Christmas cards. I haven't had a phone conversation, but this summer in August, I was able to see them for an hour or two, but I wasn't allowed to mention anything. I had to act like that nothing had happened. So I really want to talk to my kids about this and to a lot of other people, but they listen to all my phone conversations and they copy every letter that goes in and out. And it's that, everyone's afraid everything will get twisted around and used against them. And so none of us have been able to deal honestly with a lot of the things that need to be dealt with.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
I don't
I do. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would like a picture marked as next in order, Your Honor.
Triple line.
Why is she smiling?
Eight by 10 black and white photograph, Mr. Early?
Yes, of the defendant.
All right. Somewhere.
Showing you what has been marked triple I for identification. Is this a picture of you?
Yes.
And is this what you came to look like at the time of your arrest in 1989?
Yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our lunch recess at this time. I apologize for going into the lunch hour, but our sidebar was because we knew we were close to the end, and the attorneys and I felt it was better to finish up. But I hope I didn't inconvenience anybody by doing that, and if I did, I apologize. We'll be in recess until
We have a little extra,
2 o'clock.
the regular lunch hour.
2 o'clock? You want longer?
Yes.
It's 2 o'clock, all right? Recess till 2 o'clock. Please remember the admonition, don't to discuss the case among yourselves nor allow anyone else to discuss it with you, nor form any opinions until it's finally submitted to you. See you at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Isn't it true that when you talked to Deputy Woods, that you told Deputy Woods, for example, one day after testifying, that it was a good day today. I had the jury eating out of my hands.
No.
Deputy Woods was the deputy that was responsible for getting you prepared and ready to come to court each day, correct?
Yes.
And are you indicating that you never had any discussions with Deputy Woods about how you were impressing the last jury?
I don't remember those discussions. I don't remember any specific discussions about that.
Do you remember talking to her about how important it was for you to give the right impression to the jury and telling her about disagreements that you'd had with your counsel about what kind of clothes you should wear? And the fact that wearing bright clothes wouldn't be a good impression, it would make you look too happy, and that your counsel wanted you to only wear dark clothes and drab clothes to make you look depressed.
No, Deputy Woods ended up picking out.
Excuse me, if you just answer my question, did you ever have any conversation like that with Deputy Woods?
No.
You have been described by people who know you well as being a good actress, haven't you?
I've never heard that.
Never heard that Dr. Jacobson, the doctor that you saw for quite a period of time, described you as a great actress?
I've never heard that he said that, no.
That you had several different personas that you could
Your
display?
Honor, I'm going to object to this.
Yeah, very vague.
You indicated that
Exactly.
just this morning before we broke, that you had not been able to tell anyone how sorry you were. It is true that since you've been in jail, in fact, very shortly after the time you were put in jail, that you started writing letters to people, right?
I've written letters from jail, yes.
You've written probably hundreds of letters from jail.
Maybe over the 2 years.
And even in the course of a couple of weeks to a couple of months, right after November the 5th, you wrote many letters every day to friends, to family, to newspaper reporters, to celebrities. You were writing many letters during those, let's take the 3 months after you were incarcerated, weren't you?
I don't remember specifically, but I have written letters, yes.
Well, you're not, are you disputing what I'm saying, that you have written probably?
See, her answers are so vague. The prosecutor's trying to pin her down and get like a exact answer, but she's really good at not answering.
At least 100 letters during that period of time?
In the 3 months after I was there, I wouldn't know. I don't know of the numbers.
Did you write many letters to your friends and to your family?
In that specific period of time?
Yes.
I don't remember in that specific period of time who I would have written to.
Did you write letters to newspaper reporters?
I corrected some articles. Yes, I corrected articles that I read that were wrong.
Okay. And did you write letters to celebrities, for example?
I don't know what you're referring
Did you write
to.
to Cindy Garvey?
Oh
Oh, I don't remember. Did I? I don't know.
Oh my God.
There was nothing ever preventing you from saying anything about your feelings about what had happened in any of those letters that you wrote, was there?
No.
You were free to express your feelings about what had happened and how you felt about it, correct?
Yes.
And you had many phone calls, many phone conversations with people shortly after your incarceration, in which you were free to express your feelings about what had happened.
Well, I've already testified I wasn't free to express any feelings really because I knew the letters were copied coming in and going out and that the phone calls are listened to constantly. So I was, and even the visits are listened to. So everyone was pretty paranoid about that.
You were advised that the phone calls were not monitored. Your phone calls were never monitored. And you
Oh,
were
I don't
advised-
know that.
Okay. Are you saying that you felt that you couldn't express any of your feelings about what had happened because you felt that your letters were being monitored?
Yes.
And how would that hurt you or your case to say that you felt sorry for what you had done?
See, now the
How
prosecutor's
would it
playing
hurt my
games.
case to say
How did
that?
the fact that you were being monitored prevent you from expressing your feelings like you've indicated? No one would let you express your.
Would interpret those and get copies and switch everything around.
So are you indicating that you felt inhibited about talking to people about what had happened?
Yes,
Yes.
I said that.
You did write a letter, for example, to Amy Wallace shortly after you were in jail, correct?
That would have been one of the corrections of an article, I believe.
And in that letter, you start off by saying, I have pages and pages of notes setting the story straight, incident by incident. In most cases, you have the general idea, but the chronology and the facts are all twisted around. I'll call. We can talk. Neighbors and friends have bits and pieces. Only I know.
Betty even seems a bit shocked at her own words, doesn't she? Now, clearly she's miffed. Okay. She's angry. This is her, don't you know who I am? That look. All right. and she's pretty unhappy about having her persona questioned. So I thought this was a funny place,
Know the whole truth. Are you saying that you were inhibited about telling her the whole truth as you saw it?
I was just correcting her article. Whatever she said that I felt was wrong, I wanted corrected.
Okay. Are you saying that you were inhibited about saying anything that you wanted to correct anything that had been written about you?
Yes, because I wouldn't have expressed the feelings that I'm talking about to a strange newspaper reporter.
While we're on the subject, we'll come back, but when you say that you were correcting things that
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't lock George in a suitcase. I have never put anyone in a suitcase. You clearly don't know who I am.
had been written. In fact, you made a specific correction with Amy Wallace about what Dan Broderick had said after you shot him. You indicated that Lee, who had testified that he said, okay, you shot me, I'm dead.
Mm-hmm.
You called up Amy Wallace and you told her, no, that's not right. That's not what he said. He said, okay, you got me, I'm dead,
Right.
correct?
Right.
Didn't you just testify before lunch that you didn't remember him saying anything to that effect?
I didn't remember him sitting up in bed and saying anything like that, no.
You don't remember testifying last time?
But I remember,
Excuse me. Do you remember testifying the last time you testified that he put his hands up and he said, okay, you got me?
yes.
Didn't you just testify earlier today that you didn't remember him saying anything like that?
Well, I don't know. What I really testified to is I don't really know what happened in that room. It was all these flashes of things.
Excuse me, you answer the question. Let me just ask you this. If you don't really know what happened in that room, how was it you could write or call Amy Wallace and correct her about what had been said about what happened in that room?
Because at that time, way back then, I thought Dan said that.
Okay, so way back then, when you talked to Amy Wallace back in March of 1990, you had a clear recollection then of what had occurred in that room. Is that what you're saying?
No. In March, no. When Lee said that in the very beginning, in November, that I said that, we discussed it. I said, I couldn't have said that because she said I didn't know if I shot anybody, so he couldn't have said that.
Did you not call up Amy Wallace and tell her, correct her? He didn't say you shot me, correcting one of her daughters. He said, okay, you got me.
Your Honor, that's been asked and answered.
Sustained.
You called Amy Wallace anyway to correct what your daughter had said. Is that correct?
Your Honor, asked and answered.
Overruled, you can answer that, yes or no.
Yes, I guess, if you said I did.
And it made you talked to her about
Pompous.
several corrections that you thought that had been in the press that you didn't think were correct, and you wanted to correct the record, right?
Yes.
And Amy Wallace was not the only reporter that you talked to shortly after committing these crimes, correct? You talked to many reporters.
I don't
Is that
remember if I talked. Other reporters came to talk to me.
Have you
John
given-
Gaines, I've spoken to John Gaines, but I don't know when that started.
Okay, you've indicated you've given interviews to John Gaines from the San Diego Union, correct?
Last year, yes.
And you gave an interview or several interviews to Alan Abrahamson from the LA Times, correct?
On the telephone,
On the telephone or in person? Did you give an interview with Alan Abrahamson?
I've spoken to him, yes.
And you've talked to Irene Schaefer from the La Jolla Light,
Oh, Irene doesn't work at the La Jolla Light.
okay? Did you talk to Cynthia Queen from the La Jolla Light?
That's
And
so
you talked to-
funny that she corrected an extraneous bit of information that has zero to do with her case or the death of Dan and his wife, Linda, I think's her name. And then so she corrects her and then watch the little smirk and royal air about it, like you're forgiven.
Did you talk to Cynthia Queen from the?
This girl, this type of person is so fascinating to me. They're so interesting to talk to and watch. Watch her body language.
Correct.
On the telephone,
On the telephone or in person? Did you give an interview with Alan Abraham?
I've spoken to him, yes.
And you've talked to Irene Schaefer from the La Jolla Light?
Oh, Irene doesn't work at the La Jolla Light.
Okay. Did you talk to Cynthia Queen from the La Jolla Light?
Yes.
And you,
Oh, now I'll give you my approval. Thank you so much for getting your facts straight, ma'am. You clearly don't know who I am. I deserve to have the facts correct when you address me.
you talked to a reporter from the New York Times?
Yes.
And you talked to a reporter, author who wrote an article in the Ladies' Home Journal?
I don't really remember
Kathleen
if I
Newmeyer?
spoke to her on the phone, maybe in New York.
You talked to Joyce Wadler from People Magazine?
No,
Did you give an interview to anyone from People
he
Magazine?
was a man.
Lorenzo Bennett?
I think that was his name, yes.
And in none of those interviews, those people have all written articles about what you've said. In none of those interviews did they ever say that you expressed any remorse for these killings, did they?
I don't know.
Are you indicating that you expressed remorse to these people and they didn't, and they said the opposite in their reports?
The remorse that I'm talking about was what I was sorry for was to Dan's parents, to Dan's brothers and
What? Dude, okay, this is that kind of vague, haughty type of response, wiggling, if you will, not to get pinned down on anything. And it's exasperating if you're in a position that you need a solid answer, right? Now, if you don't need a solid answer, then it's dependent on your frame of mind. It can be a little bit amusing. But the topic of conversation is that the editors from the newspaper said that Betty had no remorse, and Betty said, "Oh, yes, I did have remorse. How dare you say that?" And then she's like, "Okay, so the people from the reporters from the newspapers, they're lying about you?" And then she says, "Excuse me, clearly you don't know who you're dealing with. Could we get a definition for the word remorse, please? The type of remorse I, Betty Broderick, am addressing is that I feel bad for Dan's mom and dad. I have remorse for Dan's family."
no,
Did you give an interview to anyone from People
he
Magazine?
was a man.
Lorenzo Bennett?
I think that was his name, yes.
And in none of those interviews, those people have all written articles about what you've said. In none of those interviews did they ever say that you expressed any remorse for these killings, did they?
I don't know.
Yes, you do.
Are you indicating that you expressed remorse to these people and they didn't, and they said the opposite in their reports?
The remorse that I'm talking about was what I was sorry for was to Dan's parents, to Dan's brothers and sisters.
I'm not sorry at all that I shot Dan and Linda. I'm the crusader for all women scorned everywhere. They're going to erect statues in my memory, lady. I did a good thing getting rid of Dan. He had no right to treat me that way.
And stuff. I haven't spoken to those people.
Was there
To
anything
Linda's family, I haven't spoken to them.
Mr. Broderick, was there anything that prevented you from writing a letter to any of Dan's family or parents or any of Linda's family since the time that you committed these crimes?
Yes,
I was writing to my fans.
When you talked to the author from People Magazine, which was just last month, isn't it true that you indicated absolutely no remorse, that Linda knowingly dated a married man, that you felt equally unconcerned about the death of your ex-husband? I wasn't the one who had the affair. I won't accept the blame for what happened. Didn't you say that?
I don't remember specifically saying that. If he says I said it, I said it.
Well, would you like me to show it to you to see if it refreshes your recollection?
No, I'm sure it's written there. It says it.
I'm not arguing with you. You clearly don't know who I am. I would never lower myself to argue. Look at that grin on her face. Ooh, that is devilish.
You didn't have just one interview with Amy Wallace. You had numerous interviews with her, correct?
Oh,
Before she wrote a large article about you?
This was in the very beginning, so I would have talked to her. I don't remember how many times she might have come there, or I mostly talked to her on the phone, I think.
Is it correct when she describes that over the next 6 months you called and wrote often, always eager to talk?
Sure, I don't know.
I'm just asking you if that's a correct indication of how many times you talked.
6 months from when it happened to when she wrote the article.
Yes?
Probably, yes.
And she too indicated in her article that described you as being intelligent, angry, and without remorse.
Were those her words?
Yes?
Well, if that's what she thought, that's what she thought.
Well, are you indicating that you indicated something different to her, that you expressed remorse?
She
to her?
didn't give me an intelligence test. She didn't know if I had any remorse. Those are her words. She didn't know if I was any of those things.
Well, she described it when she talked to you the very first meeting, that you insisted that all your actions were justified. You said, quote, "He went off with the bimbo at 40 driving a red Corvette. Haven't we heard this before?" Did you say that to Amy Wallace?
I did say that.
You also told Amy Wallace that you were upset that people were mourning Dan and Linda. Didn't you?
I was upset at the way that the funeral was handled, yes.
You said it always makes me mad when people call them the victims. You're tired of hearing people mourn Dan and Linda. Did you say that?
I thought the way the funeral was handled was wrong.
Okay, now she's got a problem with the way that Dan's parents managed the funeral. It is shocking.
And it wasn't that you were upset that you couldn't go to the funeral. What you were upset about, and that you expressed to several people, was that Dan had gotten full rights in the Catholic Church, and you didn't think that was appropriate because he was divorced.
No, I was very upset I didn't go to the funeral. I would have handled the funeral extremely differently, however.
Did you tell Amy Wallace that all of your actions were justified?
Referring to which all of my actions? I don't know. If she
Did
said
you
it
ever
in
make a
quotation,
statement to Amy Wallace that all of your actions were justified?
I don't know.
And when you were in jail, you also made statements similar to the ones that you made to Maria Peralta. You made statements like that to other people. It wasn't just Maria Peralta that you talked about your feelings about Linda, correct?
Excuse me?
Did you make statements about your feelings about Linda to other people in jail?
I guess so. I mean,
Did you tell Deputy Woods, for example, similar to what you said to Maria Peralta, that Linda was, quote, a fucking bitch? She was living in my house, driving my car, sleeping in my bed.
Your Honor, I'll object. It assumes facts, not evidence.
Sustained.
Okay. So that is Betty Broderick. And now I want to go back to Sarah Boone. I want the one, yeah, this one right here. Okay. So this is the morning that poor old Jorge was badly treated, zipped up in a suitcase. Actually, they believe he suffocated. But we found out just 2 weeks ago that Sarah actually took a baseball bat and hit him in the, like where his fingers were coming out of the side of the suitcase, hit his fingers. And they believe now that that's where the lacerations and the bruises on his head came from. is that maybe she went ahead and really whopped the suitcase a couple of times. Suitcase was also moved, right? It was turned over. It was further toward the kitchen, and he could have been hurt in the movement of the suitcase.
You can't go back inside. What's going on? Who is he to you? Boyfriend?
Yes, for like 3.5 years.
What happened?
He and I, we drank last night. We had a.
Can you pass this to the around to the FD guys? Stop. They need to sign that for sure.
They're with me, so they're not.
Oh, they're not leaving.
I
Okay.
think I'll walk around.
No. Each of them has to. So this might be a real scene. So each of them has to put their name.
Normally,
in
we all just. I just put everybody.
Yeah, you call it working. What's going on?
Sorry,
I just got here, so fill me in.
No problem. Like,
Yeah,
he and I put a puzzle together. We've been doing some artwork together.
You are putting a puzzle together?
Yes, we have a puzzle that we started in there.
Okay.
Puzzles, artwork, hide and seek, childlike, right?
We've been doing art, trying to take the stuff off the wall to make new art put up there, like having a good time with one another. But we're drinking. We had a bottle of wine last night.
Okay.
So then it's like we decided to play hide and seek, right?
Okay.
So he gets in the suitcase. Okay.
Who is this guy?
That's my ex-husband, my former husband.
How did he live here with you guys?
No, I called him over here.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
So then he came over here.
Okay, so I have a question for you guys. Let's say you wake up and your current spouse or lover, they're dead, right? Something happened, they died. How many of you are going to jump up and say, I know what to do. I know exactly what to do. I should call my ex-husband or ex-wife. If you would think I'm going to call my ex-husband or ex-wife, put a 1. If you would think, oh my goodness, I better call for an ambulance, put a 2. I'm just curious about this. When I heard her say this, I thought, who does that? Who has a life or death situation on their hands and you choose to call your ex? Very, very odd, right? Strange way of thinking. Where is it? Here it is. And
I called.
This is the poor old ex-husband out there, and he's just thinking, "Good God, what did I ever see in her?"
You guys. I tried giving her CPR. The problem is I fell asleep.
When did you do CPR?
This morning when I found it.
Before you called?
Yes.
Look at that intense, that dramatic. Yes.
It's 1 o'clock right now.
I tried. I was awake, but I actually got out of the bed at like 12.
What a strange answer, right? She's asking about CPR, and then she realizes, wait a minute. If I tell them that I slept until 1 o'clock, I'm going to be in trouble. This is like a high school girl lying to her mom so she doesn't get in trouble. No, I've been awake. I didn't sleep all day. No, I didn't. I've been awake. Does this woman look like she's been awake? I have another question. Does she look sober?
30-ish, whatever. So I came downstairs and I was like, oh, he's in the suitcase still. And that's when I found him and I took him out and I tried doing CPR and then I called him and then I called you guys.
Did he get here before the fire department got here?
Who?
Your husband or
Yes.
your ex-husband?
Yes.
Okay. Where does he live at?
Right down the street.
Okay. So you were playing and who zipped him up?
I did, but then I fell asleep.
Okay.
Does she look like she's arguing with her mama? She's a high schooler, maybe junior high. She's in trouble. She's arguing, trying to state her position.
You're okay. I wasn't here. I'm just trying to figure out what.
Look at that look on her face. She is very swollen. Looks like her liver and kidneys are not very healthy. I think she looks a lot healthier now than in this video. She was looking really rough this morning.
So you were playing and who zipped him up?
I did, but then I fell asleep.
Okay. You're okay.
I mean, look, I know that this was a shocking and horrible situation. But is this a little much? Remember, this is the same woman that we saw come skipping out of the apartment doing cheerleader jumps. She's very immature.
I wasn't here. I'm just trying to figure out what happened.
I fell asleep, so I don't know if he suffocated or like had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what.
What kind of medical conditions does he have?
None that I know of.
Nothing that you know of.
None that I
take
know
any
of.
medicine?
No. All we had was a bottle of wine. Literally, just a bottle of wine.
Okay.
Doing puzzle artwork. Then we decided to play hide and seek.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the vague speech, right? The shallowness. I guess that she has somehow worked out in her mind that if you are doing childlike activities, puzzles, painting, hide and seek, those are things of innocence, right? Innocent children do those activities. And therefore, if she puts together puzzles and paints paintings and plays hide and go seek, then she couldn't possibly be guilty of harming George. She's innocent. Because she's playing these games. I truly think that's how she sort of worked this whole problem out in her mind. That's why she keeps repeating over and over, oh, we were putting together puzzles, we were painting. You can check the wall. We really do paint. But in between domestic violence events?
That's all that happened. Okay. So I don't know if he had a heart attack or what in there. Like, I don't know what happened.
So how long were you doing CPR on him prior to you calling 911? You tried that all morning?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I called him while I was doing
CPR. What
CPR.
time did you start? Probably give me a rough ballpark. Here, let me fill this deputy in, okay?
Please, may I have my Dr. Pepper? I am so cotton mouth right now.
Please, can I get my Dr. Pepper? I'm so cotton mouth right now. But they shared a bottle of wine. Somehow I'm thinking that's not accurate.
Ma'am, and you can't talk to him until we get done with this, okay?
Just don't leave, okay, Brian?
Thank you, ma'am.
Well,
Thank you.
I'll get Lucas.
Brian's going, I gotta go get my son. And I don't really want to be here. You're driving me crazy.
I know.
Do me a favor. Stand over there by that car. Give me 1 second. Just give us a second, okay?
It's on the counter.
I can't move anything from out of the house. Here, I want you to sit down because I don't want you passing out. This is probably a lot for you to deal with, right? Sit. I don't
water. Just water.
I can get you some water, okay? Just I want you not on your feet because I don't want you passing out on me.
I need water.
Okay, I'll get some for you.
You're trying to Charlie, but you're on it.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I'm not going to listen to him.
About a year and a half. About 11:30 is when I started calling to find out.
So you've had a second to kind of collect yourself. Tell it to me again. You guys were playing last night, drinking a bottle of wine,
Putting puzzles together, doing artwork.
artwork.
I had a bottle of wine and then decided to play hide and seek.
Mm-hmm.
So
What time was that? Do you remember?
I mean, I know that I was in bed probably by 12:30.
Okay.
Well, I went upstairs.
There's that, again, vague, non-responsive, shallow. This officer's trying to determine at what time he got in the suitcase. She answers by, I'm going to bed. I went to bed. Completely not answering.
At least, and I fell asleep,
Okay.
forgetting that he was in
you
the
guys
suitcase.
were playing the hide and go.
Yes.
at some point you put him in the suitcase?
No, he got in the suitcase. So he thought it would be funny to be put in the suitcase. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to joke with you and I'll zip you up and make him, squirm a little bit, whatever it is. But then I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
Where was the suitcase?
Right where it is.
Right down there?
Yes.
You zipped him in there.
Yes.
Thought it would be funny, a little
It
joke.
was. We both were laughing about it. Okay. And then I fell asleep.
Where did you fall asleep at?
Upstairs.
In your bedroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Totally forgetting that he was in the suitcase still.
Okay. And then you came back downstairs.
This morning? Or this afternoon, yes, when I got up.
What time?
12:30-ish. I was awake, but I totally forgot that he was in the suitcase. He can tell you there's a lot of things that we have been going through. Jobs.
Yeah, he did tell me.
Life, all that good stuff. So I just totally forgot.
So you began to do CPR on him?
Yes. Yes.
About what time this morning did you start doing that CPR?
No, it was the afternoon. It was afternoon because I was awake. But then I finally decided to come downstairs at like 12:30-ish, whatever it is. And I was like, I forgot he was in the suitcase. And he wasn't moving. Nothing was happening. So I unzipped him, took him out and started doing CPR on him. He was on his way over here. I called you when he got here.
Once he got here, you called us?
Yes.
Okay.
And air was coming out and he was gurgling, but I could just tell by looking at him.
But you knew how to do CPR. You were doing that on your own?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the person that was on the phone with me also, I counted with him doing it.
And he's got no medical? He doesn't take any medication?
I don't know. I don't know medical-wise. I know he doesn't take any medications whatsoever.
Okay.
The only thing, like I said, I don't know if alcohol had something to do with it, but we had a bottle of wine.
Okay. All right. Here, I want you to sit back down because I don't want
Can I have one more sip of water, please?
Yeah, go on.
Denver, Signal 29, residential, audible, 1303 Island Bay Drive.
I'll do what I can to get you a cup because I don't want you to have to keep doing that.
Maintenance should have a proper cancel medication in the front door.
She is big time hungover.
Motor unit on the channel.
The cups are like right there.
I think she looks
Sit right here. Don't talk to the ex-husband right
now.
now.
I won't. Can I have a cigarette, please?
Ma'am, I can't take anything out of the house.
It's on the back porch.
Nope, all of it. It's secure, okay? I'll try my best to get you what you need, okay? Maybe one of these deputies has a pack from someone, sit down and I'll try and get you what you need, okay?
Just cut, please.
Okay. I don't want you on your feet.
You want a camera stick?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Want to talk over here?
Okay. Not really interested in Brian. I mean, I'm sure Brian's a great guy. And I think, oh, no, a little bit more with her on it.
Hold on, I'll talk. Yeah, that'll be first thing tomorrow morning. I'll know hopefully a lot more tomorrow morning as far as him. But I cannot, there's no way I could say how, why.
So just by looking at him, why is he purple?
Oh, that's normal when someone passes away. Lividity turn.
As soon as the heart stops beating, the blood starts to settle to the lowest points of the body. And then it becomes very pronounced. So that's just called a public good. It happens every night.
I'm really scared. I want you guys to know that.
Look around. You have all these deputies here, so while we're here, nothing's going to happen to you. Before we go and make any notifications, you'll have plenty of time to leave or do whatever you need.
I think she's talking about being afraid of George's family. She says that they're going to kill her. And she's being serious, right? Overly dramatic, I think.
You do. Okay? And we can talk about that more in length. But, it's not going to be a surprise.
Real quick, and then,
but, I don't, this was totally, not intentional. That's what I'm scared about, too.
We'll have all the answers. We'll have a lot more answers tomorrow after medical examiner looks at it. Like you said, what you're seeing here is common. This is us coming out.
Protocol.
Yeah.
Protocol.
No real medical history that
I know of.
For him to have passed away, we come out.
I know.
We come out and do an investigation. Medical examiner's office, we sending people out. This is what we do. If he was 75 years old and had a history of heart condition, we wouldn't be here.
I don't know what it is.
Exactly. And that's what we're here to find out. We're just here to get the answers. The answers that you want, the answers that his family's going to want.
I just really want to see my son. Like, I really need to see my son. I mean, I know I can't go anywhere, but.
Right.
So do I just like sit out here and wait for you guys?
If you would, yeah, please.
Is anybody else having to show up, or everybody's here that needs to be here?
My team's here that needs to be here. The medical examiners will show up when we call them, but we're not ready for them yet. So they're going to take him. They're going to take some photos, take him. But that's towards the end of it, and they'll be called well in advance when we're ready for them. But we're not ready for them at this point, so we won't be calling them quite yet. Okay. So like I said, I got to go do some paperwork. They're going to chat with some people, and then we're going to come back and talk to you if you're okay with that.
Yes,
so just give us a little bit more time. Like I said, I need to go and do that, and he's going to go do something.
So, like, do you guys tell his family, like, today or after tomorrow?
We have to.
It's the law.
We have to go make contact with the family.
Yeah.
They have to be notified.
Once our investigation is pretty much complete here, once we leave here, we will be going to.
But again, we're not going to just go and do it without you knowing. You'll know. We'll talk to you prior to doing anything like that.
But I understand what you guys and how you do it, and, you know. So, but like, what do you just tell him? What do you tell his parents? Like, what's the reason he passed away?
We tell them what we know at that point.
Yeah.
We tell them the truth.
And that we're going to be waiting for the autopsy results, and I will be at the autopsy in the morning, and hopefully the doctor will be able to give me some of what they think and see.
Yeah. We'll give them their number. They can contact them and get it from them.
So yeah, they're gonna know what we're here, what we're investigating, and that
they're gonna think I killed him.
Why would they think that?
They always have said that. They've always have said that.
What have they
I
said?
told you it's because I'm the blue-eyed white dragon. That's what they call me. Because
Blue-eyed white dragon.
So he's basically just not really been around his family because he chooses me over them. Even after I've been.
And I will say this. So she says that he chooses me over them, right? She probably likes that. Like, that's probably one of the reasons. That's probably something she's getting out of the relationship, is that he's choosing me over his family, even though his family really hates me because I beat him up, right? So, and I don't think either of the two were okay. I think they were mistreating each other, and they both had a serious substance problem. It was just a train wreck, right? All the way around. Okay. So what do y'all think? Can you see similar patterns of communication and behavior? Do they, even though they're very dramatically different in terms of it, like opportunity, money, I guess level of comfort, living, level of health, but you still see that same sense of entitlement, right? You still see that flair for the dramatic in both of these women who couldn't live any different lives than they did. So I thought it was an interesting opportunity to look at histrionic personality disorder. And now maybe in the future, instead of saying, oh my God, he's such a narcissist, now at least we can say, oh my goodness, look at that histrionic behavior. All right, everybody. I do hope that you guys have a wonderful, amazing, fun Saturday night. And remember, this coming Monday, we are starting the jury selection for Sarah Boone's trial, unless we get another hurricane. I know, perish that thought, right? Okay, everybody, you guys have a fun evening. I will see you tomorrow.